Good afternoon, everybody. Chris Frew here today with a good friend and guest of mine today, Martha Wang. Martha is the Assistant Director of the Robert E. Fischell Institute for Biomedical Devices. I'm really excited for today's conversation, Martha. Welcome.
Thanks, me too. I'm excited to chat about Medtech. What's the
Yeah,
buzz, right?
let's get some buzz going on around Medtech.
Love it.
Well, these are one of my favorite programs to do every week. And I get to interview people like you who are people like finalists for Community Builders of the Year.
Oh, yes,
And
thank
and people that are building community, building biotechs, building the industry. That's what this conversation is all about. And that's what this series is all about. And I just want to take a minute for some housekeeping. I want to thank CRB, who's our sponsor for these programs. While we talk to ecosystem builders every day, they are literally building the ecosystem. CRB is a design build firm that specializes in life sciences. So if you're working in a lab or manufacturing a product or building a device, it's a good chance they probably built the facility that you're working in. And we couldn't be more happy about their sponsorship and their support for us helping to build the community. So thank you, CRB, for helping to make these events possible. And with that, let's get to talking, Martha. Martha, could you start off and just give us a high level about your institute and what you do day in and day out each day?
Sure. So I'm so excited to be here, Chris. I just first want to say thank you. It's a real honor both to be, one of the finalists for the community builders of the BioHealth Capital Region and part of the BioBuzz, excitement around MedTech and just all the work that we've done to bring quite a lot of interest and exposure to all the successes that we have in our region. I think we've done a lot of great work and I'm excited to partner together to keep that going. So me, and my work in the Fischell Institute. So I'm assistant director at the Fischell Institute. We were founded back in 2017, so we're pretty young, just about 8 years old. And the nice thing is that we received a bequest from Dr. Bob Fischell at the time that the University of Maryland actually received and started the Department of Bioengineering. And at that time, Bob Fischell says, hey, we do a lot of great work in bioengineering, but there's not many people focused on medical devices. And so I want to make sure that we have an institute devoted to medical device development. So the Fischell Institute is here to do that. That's what we do. We work not just with people who are doing research within the University of Maryland system, but we also partner with companies around the region as well as internationally to help get those technologies to market. And we really focus on the whole path from ideation all the way to post-market surveillance for medical device development. But our sweet spots, I say, are twofold. One is in early technology prototyping, design, and validation. And then the second part of that is also on the regulatory support side. So the Fischell Institute is made up of two main components. One is the PIs and anybody who's affiliated with us. So anybody who's interested in medtech development, has done research at the University of Maryland system in medical devices, or even is a practicing clinician in our region. We have a lot of excellent participants from many different applications. And so we have a great just network of collaborators within our group. And then the second part that we have is the Fischell Foundry, which is my dream team of engineers and experts. I've been really lucky to work with just wonderful men and women who actually have an expertise and a deep knowledge in device development, prototyping, regulatory support. So that's like a really long-winded answer to say we love what we do in supporting and just improving medical technology commercialization in our region, and then helping international companies come to Maryland and find out what's so great about living here and working here and really running a company in our region.
Yeah, Maryland has a great medtech and medical device community. And of course, as storytellers that we are at BioBuzz, I love shouting about that. I love talking about that. It's I don't think we toot our own horn loud enough as a region. But there's a lot of assets here. And it sounds like a lot of those assets kind of flow through the Fischell Institute. I mean, in some form or fashion, or you're building a cog in the wheel to help with some of that. Could you talk about that? Like, what are some of the assets that are here? What are some of the maybe success stories or programs that have come out? But like, let's toot our own horn a little bit to It's like, what are some, good case studies or examples that showcase what's possible here?
Absolutely. So one of the things that we love doing that I didn't actually highlight in that overview of the Fischell Institute is workforce development.
Mm.
So, being at a world-class university, it's top in its entrepreneurial development. That's one of the things that the University of Maryland has been exceedingly successful in, is that we can harness both those students who are passionate about creating their own businesses and advancing their own technologies with a love of medical devices, and really understanding how do we put those together to make the biggest difference in our world and help people. And so the Fischell Institute, one of the things that we love seeing is the successes of the people who have come from our university and through our programs. And we've been really lucky because the Fischell Institute is unique. We are actually physically located in two different spaces, both here in College Park, the University of Maryland's engineering and main campus, as well as we have a lab up at the School of Medicine. So a lot of those successes that we see are actually from that partnership that we have between a doctor or a nurse or a healthcare technician that sees a problem and says, hey, like, how do we create a solution? They come to my engineers and they say, okay, well, let's work on this together. So one of my favorite examples actually is something slightly different. When I was early in my career in teaching medical device development, it's a course that I'm passionate about. I mean, that probably doesn't surprise you, right? Like I run the Institute for Medical Devices and I teach a course about it, right? Like not too far a reach, but I got really lucky. I had these two amazing students early in my teaching career. They said to me, Professor, we really want to create this novel way of replacing shoulders. And I was like, that's interesting. In the United States, we don't really focus on shoulder replacement devices. We really focus on hips, knees. Those are like the most critical applications when you talk about joint translation, surgeries into a device. And these kids were saying to me, and they were kids. We joke about it because we've been working together now for, I don't know, 9 years. It's been a long time. We've been joking, but they said to me, hey, I had this idea. I was riding on a motorbike at home in India. I fell off. I broke my shoulder. I had a really serious injury. And I realized, like, during physical therapy and recovery, that if I did need a shoulder replacement later on in life, the technology out there wasn't available. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that's great because that's not my area of expertise. If you ask me about knees, I'd say, yeah, I'm going to need one of those. Like, I know what's on the horizon in those technologies because it's personally affecting me. So when you have that student who comes to you and says, I've had this experience, I've had this physical trauma, and I know in the future when I'm going to be doing, like potentially PT around like trying to support arthritis prevention or like physical help for an injury, the question for them is like, well, what other treatments are there? And there wasn't one that would actually repair what he was needing. And so he and his partner, so we work in pairs or, threes in my class, they came up with this technology. They reached out to a clinician, Dr. Mohit Galotra at the University of Maryland, whose specialty is in reverse total shoulder arthroplasty. So, actually doing this full technology, they got his buy-in. They went to surgeries with him. And all along, we came up with this plan, right? We said, okay, well, if you have this idea, let's bring it to fruition. So we're in the process. We're at the point where we're doing cadaver testing. We're talking with companies about licensing the technology. And this is just a success story that you rarely see because it started with like two kids, right? Who now, granted, they probably were like 20, 22 and 23 at the time, but they called themselves kids now that, they're approaching 30. So I've been really lucky to just see these. That's just like one small example of our students. They actually were invited to be some of our initial fellows in our Empower Fellowship program, where we actually partner with students and teach them how to commercialize a medical device. So they've ran the whole process from being a graduate student through our fellowship, and now they're off doing other things while pursuing this technology. So I have to say it's been a wonderful experience just being their mentor and being part of that technology development.
That's amazing. And I love how you look at entrepreneurship as workforce development.
Yeah, I
mean,
do.
it is though. Sometimes workforce development, we think about, entry level like jobs or transitioning
Oh, yeah.
careers, but like workforce development,
Oh, we got to make a job.
that's a critical part of the workforce is entrepreneurs who are creating new shoulder devices and everything in between.
Yeah, so you actually see well, you see my fake shoulder behind us. I always forget
Oh,
it's
I
right
see that.
behind me,
Yeah.
but yeah. So we have a bunch of different components. But yeah, it's fun when it's like you get to bring a bunch
Yeah.
of fake bones with you when you go to
Mm.
conferences, and people are like, "What's in your bag?" And you pull them up, and you say, "I'm making jobs and changing the world one shoulder
Yeah.
at a time."
One
Right?
shoulder at a time.
Yeah.
So, not that you have all the world on your shoulders, but you do a lot there. So you're connecting students to translational insights and connect them with the clinicians. So you've got programs that connect, when ideas come out of your program and you can plug them directly into the hospital system, or um, you also work with companies as well. So
Absolutely.
how do companies work with you?
So a couple different ways. We have homegrown companies, which are similar to like that idea. If you have a great concept, you work with our engineers, you develop IP together, and then we would pursue, what's the best path for commercialization? What's the way you're going to enter the market? And where you're going to enter the market. So we do a lot of market analysis and assessment to determine strengths, right, and where to approach it. But the big thing that we do with companies, in addition to that, is actually saying, like, oh, you have a technology that you work with internationally and you want to bring it to the States. We can help you assess, where does it fall regulatory wise? How are you best going to be positioned to manufacture and distribute your device in the United States? And then also partner them with great opportunities that are sponsored by the University of or the Maryland as a state ecosystem to actually get them, have a soft landing into the state, right? So how do we actually get them here and working towards that? So we've had some really great successes. There is a company in China named Celestre, and we help them transition their technologies that were in use over there to being available here. We actually are submitted two 510Ks that received clearance, which was really exciting, and developing those technologies and making sure that people in the United States have access to the best technologies out there.
That's fascinating. I had no idea that you played such a role in that kind of soft landing, value chain.
Yeah, and I think and that fits right in with my concept of like making our region stronger by not only bringing like new technologies to market, but finding a way that existing technologies can be developed and translated for like our population that's regional. I think that access to technologies is unique in our region. I think because of all of those, you talked about like what makes Maryland special. And it's not just like all of the companies and the federal government, but it's access to all those different scientific
Mhm.
bodies that are working towards making this place better for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. It's Maryland's it's like the mini United States, and
Yes.
there's so many resources here. So, I can imagine if you're a company looking to come to the States, or your new company growing, I mean, we have, world-class institutes, yours being one of them, world-class healthcare
Hmm.
uh,
Yeah.
systems, so you get to see a lot of, I mean, people fly to Hopkins from all around the world to be treated. We have military health. We
Yep.
have some of the largest military health, systems, and the kind of military government part of Maryland also.
Hmm.
So no matter what you're building, there's, we have uh, we can plug you into the right ecosystem in Maryland. And I think that's something I feel is unique when I travel around to other hubs,
Yes.
that you do have, and it's all connected. I mean, I know personally how much you work, hence your Community Builder of the Year recognition. How much you work to make sure that you have connections with all these different components in the ecosystem, and that I guess to me, like that's a critical value proposition for again, I go back to that cog. I can go to Martha, and I know I can figure out the landscape of where to go next.
Yeah. And the best thing is we also can say we don't do that here, but somebody regionally does.
Mhm.
And that's what I love, when we get together as a community and really determine like whose strengths can we leverage to be successful as like an overarching group. I think that we do that really well regionally, and we certainly lift each other up. So it's one of my favorite
Agreed.
things about being here. I always tell people, I say, come join us, drink the
Agreed.
water. It's great.
Yeah, you're very close to the right person you need to know. All you need to know is one or two people, and you can get there.
Well, and it's nice, right? Because if you can make those connections, people appreciate it. Because I know
Mhm.
there was a time in my career, Chris, where you and I worked together in totally different capacities, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like now we have opportunity to work together in these roles, which allows us to like continue those, I guess, connection building, right? Which is
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. Martha and I first met at Osiris Therapeutics
Yeah,
years ago.
3 years. Yeah.
And which was one of the first FDA approved stem cell products, if I'm
Yes.
correct. Yeah.
Yes. What a fascinating journey. I joined there early in my career and was able to participate in just seeing the development of the technology using a stem cell, right? And then my team was manufacturing these stem cell based products. And we switched locations and grew and grew and grew. And eventually, my group was divested from the company, but it was just an amazing experience. It really kicked off my career and understanding that I want to be part of this, right? Like I want to be where the work happens, where I can help people. I love making products. This is part of why I love being at the Institute for Medical Devices, right? Like I make products every day, or at least my engineers make products every day that, that I could see on the shelf someday and helping a patient in need. I think the joy that we get from being in medtech in general, that's what brings my students to our discipline. I think that it's easy to be passionate about something that like helps other people.
Yeah. Oh, I couldn't agree more. I have a couple questions for you, Martha. So, Osiris was a stem cell product, and then you have I would say like biotech and crab cakes is what Maryland does great,
Yes,
right? Like,
I agree. Yes.
so like part of that is we have a really strong stem cell regenerative medicine field in
Yep.
Maryland.
Mm-hmm.
TEDCO has the stem cell research fund.
Yep.
So they support a lot of that. And we have a really robust Medtech field as well. Now, where do they cross paths at Fischell? Like like a regenerative medicine, like Theradaptive is another company that's
Right.
doing really interesting things. But where does that fit in Fischell?
Well, the fun thing is in the Fischell Institute, we really look at medical devices as like an umbrella, right? So if you work on biotech, if you're willing to look at, creating a technology that's going to have a direct application for human health, then we're meant to be together. And so because of that, we have people who do much more biologically active applications. I have a PI here, which is one of our investigators. He does work, and he's currently on a sabbatical with Cartesian, right? And they've done some great work right now. And his lab focuses on like immunotherapy or like harnessing the immune system. Well, people say to me like, well, his lab is front and center in my institute. So the question is like, well, how is that medtech? And so we talk about, we're looking to harness all of these different applications in the body. One of the first things you teach students is like, if you mess with one part of your body, it's going to impact another. So if you're working on a medical device and that medical technology, you need to make sure that we harness the biology, we harness the immune system's response. We understand if we're going to implant something, how is that going to have a trickle effect all over the body, right? So I think that one of the things that we look for when we're just assessing the success of technology is trying to see like, okay, how does this fit into our like portfolio of successes? Can we leverage any of those successes? Can we partner you with someone with a technology that we've seen before that has worked really well? Like, do I understand that path? And if I don't understand that, that's when I turn to one of those like wonderful people that I've worked with in previous times in my career and say like, hey, can you help them? Like let's find this this ability to leverage that, both the biotech and the medtech. And part of that is also the defense application, right? You talked a little bit about that, Chris. Like we work closely with USIS and with Walter Reed, and understanding like the technology needs there, and making sure that if we're not developing something, that we then start focusing on it. And I think that's one of our really unique opportunities in our region, that we get access to those like questions, right? Like, can you make this? Can you do this? Can you develop this? And the answer is like, if not me, then who, right?
Yeah. Oh, I couldn't agree more. And again, I'm going to keep echoing that on this call, that you have this diversity in Maryland that as you put it, you have this integrated approach at Fischell because a med tech does integrate with all these other systems. But externally here, you have such a robust community in Maryland. You have the military that we talked about, the hospitals. I mean, you have a biomaterials focus, right? I mean,
Yeah, you
biomaterials
betcha. That's my background, actually. Yep.
Yeah, and that's up
Yep.
at Aberdeen. They're doing a lot around that, which is 45 minutes away. So, there is this kind of robust ecosystem that can all kind of work together, and you don't have to fly across the country.
No.
And then you can run your clinical trials right here at any of our
Right.
amazing, from MedStar to Hopkins Healthcare to University of Maryland Medical System. I mean, we have it all right here. And a lot of that, I'm going to pivot here. Watch this. So, a lot of that's all. A lot of that's all going to come together in one week
Yes.
for a very special week that's coming up. So a lot of those resources are going to be coming together for Maryland Medtech Week. Martha, tell us about Maryland Medtech Week.
Yes, and this is what I'm so excited about as someone who believes in developing our community, like bringing us all together to find areas of strength that we can leverage. We are hosting in April 8th through the 11th is going to be the Maryland Medtech Week. Oh, sorry, excuse me, April 7th. We start on Monday. April 7th through the 11th is Maryland Medtech Week. We are thrilled to be hosting the Medtech Summit. So Maryland Medtech Summit will be on Tuesday, April 8th. And it is our cornerstone event of the week, followed by 2 days of MedTech Innovators Pitch Competition, which is their road show, where it's an invitational experience where companies come, talk about their technologies, and people like myself and other experts in the field give them feedback and say, like, okay, whether or not we think that they're ready for investment or where areas of improvement. And then this is bookended by two investment-based activities held by Equifora Capital, and Deb Hemingway's team and Bob Story's team is hosting a private investors only meeting with the Launchport organization. So we're really thrilled. We've been organizing this with the University of Maryland in Baltimore and the Maryland Department of Commerce and the Launchport to put together this week. We actually had a pilot of this last year. Our MedTech Summit, Chris was really kind. He came and participated actually on a panel on workforce development, which was super successful, and I think gave a lot of keys as to areas that we're going to focus on this year as we pivot our concept and really focus on healthcare of the future, right? So we understand what we do well in Maryland, and what we're looking at doing across this day is really understanding like what's upcoming and how are we going to take advantage of those opportunities. So we know there are many trends coming, and this is something you always talk about, Chris. So I suspect you are the expert when it comes to trends. I know you always ask people that question, but I bet if I turn the tables on you, you would give me the same answers that I hear from everyone else, right? Like, we all know what's hot, what's interesting. And so we are going to spend a day saying, hey, what do we do well in Maryland? What's upcoming? And how are we going to leverage the resources we have? And we're going to talk about things exactly like you said, like how do you use all of the clinical resources we have? We have clinical trial opportunity locations. You can find different venture teams to work with to like assess your technology. How do you like pivot if you have something that maybe isn't the best application, but you have some good kernels? How do you take those kernels and grow them into like a really successful story? So we're really excited. We just opened registration, and I highly recommend if you're interested, making sure that you can get your registration in quickly, because last year we filled up within 48 hours of opening registration. So part of what I'm coming on here, Chris, is to talk about MedTech, the summit, and also just the week in general, and share that we're getting together to really focus on what we do well in the DMV and the BioCapital Health Region, and really just expand on that. We have a lot of takeaways that we expect people to have from this, action items, ways that we're going to really improve what we do as a whole. So I'm excited. It's going to be a fabulous opportunity to just get together and focus on what we can do for the future to help our region succeed.
I love that. I love MedTech of the future. So the MedTech Summit is part of MedTech Week.
Yes. Yes.
And is there a separate application for? It sounded like there was a pitch competition to it. Same website. We can put it in the comments here.
Yeah.
Same website for both. You can, if you're a startup or a student that wants to submit, you can submit to that.
Yes, and what we're going to do is we have those for the summit on over a short period, not short period. We have a condensed period over lunch. So it's a captive audience. You can talk about your company or technology and really focus on like the ways that we can partner together, which I think is key for our region, right? Like we talked about, we have lots of resources. So make sure like what's the right resource for you.
That's great. So I'm going to throw some, you said trends and insights. So I like to,
Oh, you love it.
um, what are your thoughts on space med tech?
Ooh, I love that. So one of the things that we're really lucky about in our region is that we have NASA Goddard right here. And it's funny enough, but one of my really good friends, she's actually a solar scientist at NASA. So I always joke, like, if she thinks my idea is good, then I have like a legitimate, like astrophysicist that likes my work. So I always take that as a thumbs up. But yes, one of the things that we look at in the Fischell Institute is making sure the technology that we're developing is like for the future, right? So those applications, whether you're going to be looking at a low resource environment like space, right? You don't have access to all the different things we have here. We have to make sure that our devices actually are going to be usable in different austere environments. That's something we do really well already. And so we actually go after those NASA like requests for proposals because we say, hey, we've designed this that works in this application because we've already taken into account, what does space tech look like? But oh, Chris, I'm excited. This is like, that's funny you say that. This is one of my areas that I'm super passionate about, but I never get to talk about it. So I'm excited. We actually talk about how we can get more involved.
Mhm.
I think that, especially with some of the interest in developing our technologies for space exploration beyond, it's like, well, how are we going to do that?
Mhm.
Right? Like, what if those people get sick on the way to Mars? Like, what does that look like when they get there? Like, how are we actually going to address those needs? But yeah,
Yeah.
I love it. You want to host a session on space?
I have, I was actually just with a friend the other day who wrote a book called The Milky Way Economy.
No way.
Um, so I could see if they would want to participate in it with you.
I
They'd
love
probably
just
be the
talking about
better, they'd be the better person, but it is fascinating. I think about that too. You have a lot of, uh, needs when you think about that. Like,
it. Yes.
all right, you need a shoulder, you hurt your shoulder. Well, you got to have a medical device that somebody can kind of
Oh yeah.
put on themselves so
Yes.
it creates a whole nother level of like human
Assessment.
factor thinking. So,
Yeah. Right. Like, how's this going to work when you're in space? Right.
yeah.
Exactly.
So again, but that's future. We all talk about AI, we all talk about like really biomaterials and the blends of things that are
Yeah.
happening, but
Yeah.
that definitely a future trend that I get excited thinking about and seeing about.
Oh, look at this. Yeah. We can talk about, how are we going to do Project Hail Mary, but for our technologies here, right? That's
Yeah,
huge.
I like it. Well, that's really exciting. You mentioned a couple other partners that I just want to give a shout out to. So a lot of the work in Maryland that happens, every ecosystem is built on layers, right? And there's
Yes.
an innovation pipeline, and we all thank you for everything you're doing to fuel that pipeline with rocket fuel there at the Fischell Institute.
My
Because
pleasure.
every region we need, our universities are such a wealth of new innovation and ideas that come out. And then as they come out, they have all these other resources. You mentioned Launchport, so I just want to, give a shout out to Bob and what they do. They're more of once they graduate from Martha's program, Bob and the Launchport team helps them make sure they understand how to manufacture at scale
Yes.
and reach the right customers. So it's kind of like that next level
Mhm.
as they kind of emerge. So again, it speaks to how proactive we are in Maryland with supporting our industry growth. So like great programs like that you have that put together, partner with great programs like Bob, and then Ecfora Capital is one of Maryland's most active early stage med tech
Yeah.
investors. So Deb I call her the hardest working investor I know.
Yes.
Um,
Absolutely.
and I don't know anybody that disagrees with me. Um, so she's everywhere, but they specialize and focus on med tech investment, and we host quarterly entrepreneur seminar series with Deb and Deb for the Ecfora seminar series. We have one coming up next month. So that's such an important chain of relationships there to help get these technologies up and out and so they're all going to be there at the summit. They're all going to be there part of this medtech week, but I just wanted to give everybody some context to some of those other players. And then of course Maryland Department of Commerce is so supportive of
Yes.
this whole ecosystem in general. It's a big focus for the governor. I know attracting companies is a big focus, which I know you have a large hand in. So I'm excited. I think this is going to April. Sounds like April 7th is going to be the start of a very active, very
Yeah.
exciting week for a lot of things.
It's going to be awesome. And I think, last year we had just a small taste of what our region can bring to discussing, the future of medtech and making sure we're on the forefront to take advantage of those trends. I think this is going to be a great day just to get everybody who already has an existing technology moving towards that application, whether it's space tech or rural health applications, point of care. If you want to talk about it, I'm here. I'm excited. So thank you for this, Chris. This has been awesome.
Awesome. Well, I always enjoy talking with you. It's never a dull conversation. It never has been in the 15 or plus years I've
Yeah,
known you.
it's been a minute. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, wonderful. We will put in links to everything we talked about today
Awesome.
in the show, so that everybody can, make sure they can reach out to you. Feel free to comment as well. And
Oh,
Martha's,
yeah.
available on LinkedIn if you want to reach out to her. But thank you for sharing everything you're doing. I'm sure we could have probably done this for an hour and a half to talk about really everything that you guys do. So maybe we can have you back again at the end of the year and talk some more. Maybe we can track some of the impact that MedTech Week has.
Yes, all of those partnerships. Absolutely.
Yeah, so that'd be great. Well, Martha, thank you for your time today, and thank you for all who tuned in and listened. I hope everybody has a wonderful, wonderful rest of the week, and rest up and prepare for a busy MedTech week in April.
Yes. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, everybody. Enjoy the day.
You too.